Everyone knows Medusa as the monster, the snake-haired terror who turned men to stone. But what if that story was never true? What if the Gorgon you were taught to fear was actually the only true hero of this legend? Tonight, we retell the myth of Perseus and Medusa the way it should have been told all along. Long before Perseus ever drew his sword, Medusa wasn't a beast or a curse. She was a woman, a mortal priestess in Athena's temple. The ancient poets once wrote of her beauty, her kindness, her fierce devotion to the goddess of wisdom and war. She dedicated her life to helping others, offering sanctuary to women fleeing violence, and praying for justice that never came. But the gods rarely grant mercy. Poseidon's desire turned sacred ground into a place of horror. And Athena, furious not at the offender but the victim, cast her punishment upon Medusa. She was transformed, her golden hair turned to venomous serpents, her once gentle eyes cursed to turn any who met them to stone. A cruel, divine judgment that rewrote her destiny forever. The storytellers say this is where the monster was born. But tell me, who was the real monster that day? Medusa or the gods? Driven to a desolate island at the edge of the world, Medusa could have become what they feared. She could have hunted men out of vengeance, spread terror across the seas, but she didn't. Instead, she turned her exile into refuge. Sailors washed up from wreckage and found food and water where they thought there was only death. Women pursued by tyrants found safety in her stone-walled cavern. Even lost children learned to laugh again under the watch of the so-called monster. Her petrifying gaze was no curse to them, it was protection. The serpents hissed at danger, and men who came with swords or lust in their eyes found their own cruelty turned against them, frozen forever before they could harm another soul. Yet the bards of Greece never sang this part of her tale. They only sang of her as a terror, because the truth that a woman could wield power to protect others was a story their world wasn't ready to tell. Then came Perseus, not the noble savior you know, but a pawn in a king's game. Sent not to rescue innocence, but to murder a legend, because a ruler desired a trophy head that could kill with a glance. Athena herself guided him, not out of justice, but to maintain a divine order that feared mortal defiance. Medusa had become too dangerous, not for her violence, but for what she symbolized. A victim who survived, a woman who fought back, a protector whose strength rivaled gods and kings alike. When Perseus entered her cavern, he didn't find a beast sleeping on a hoard of bones. He found a guardian, weary but unbroken, shielding those who had no other refuge. Accounts never tell you this, but some say she pleaded with him, offered him safety, wisdom, even her protection. But his task was not to listen, it was to kill. And when the blade fell, it was not a monster slain, it was a hero silenced. Perseus sailed home carrying Medusa's head, hailed as a conqueror, a champion of mankind. The king who sent him gained power. Athena adorned her shield with Medusa's face, not in reverence, but as a trophy. And the story you know was born. The myth painted her as horror incarnate because the world could not allow her truth to survive. To admit Medusa's heroism would mean admitting the sins of gods and men alike. It would mean questioning every story of heroism told in the name of power. But whispers remain. Stories of those she saved, of kindness beneath the snakes, of a hero whose only crime was existing outside the rules of a world built to fear her. So who was the real monster? the woman who turned predators to stone, or the gods and kings who turned a victim into a nightmare and called it justice. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of all is not that Medusa died, but that her truth was buried with her.